Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Clean Water Conversations, formerly named the Clean Water Lecture Series. My name is Rachel McKinney, and I am an AmeriCorps member serving at the Department of Environmental Conservation. The Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation's Clean Water Initiative program would like to welcome guest speaker Vera Sheehan, the director of the Abenaki Artist Association and the founder of the Abenaki Arts and Education Center, to talk about the Abenaki relationship to water. Vera is the curator of a traveling exhibit called Nebi's Life, which I had the pleasure of getting to see at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum in Vergennes when it was there. And I knew when I saw the exhibit that I needed to invite the Abenaki Artist Association to Clean Water Conversations. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Kwekwe Nidabak Undelawizi, Vera Longtoe Sheehan, Nia Elnu Wabanaki, Wantastigak. Hello, friends. My name is Vera Longtoe Sheehan, and I'm a citizen of the Elnu Abenaki tribe. And our local watershed is the confluence of the West River and Connecticut rivers and Brattleboro. So we have two different watersheds that are very important to us. And you may have heard that reflected in my introduction when I said Wantastigak. So I was telling you the place that I was from, as well as the community I'm from. As Rachel mentioned, I'm the director of the Vermont Abenaki Artist Association and the founder of the Arts and Education Center. And what we're going to be looking through today is some of the slides and some of the imagery and objects in the Nebizun Water is Life exhibit. So I'm going to pull up my share screen.
Hold on, I need to stop sharing first. There we go.
Is my sharing working?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you so much. So in the title of the exhibit, Nebizun Water's Life, you see the word Nebizun, nice and big. Nebizun is a combination of two different thoughts. Nebi is the root word, and in our language, it means water. And then the Nebizun, when you add that extra syllable on, it becomes medicine, because water is our first medicine. This is from a painting called Water is Life by Francine Poitras Jones, and it shows a baby nestled in the waters, and you can see the baby's umbilical cord. And the water is a fundamental source for all life forms. We all began in our mother's wombs in that water, and we need water to sustain us through our entire lives. So as we move through this presentation, I'm going to be sharing some Abenaki views of water and some views perhaps we all share. And I think the most important concept to keep in our minds through this entire presentation is the idea that Abenaki people, our relationship with water is that water is like a living being. It's living, it's breathing just like we are. So it's just as important, if not more important than we are. And the exhibit highlights all of our concerns about water and healthy water. And today there's so much pollution in the waters within our homeland that it threatens not only our health and our traditional lifeways. So the exhibit has drawn inspiration from a handful of different places. One was a major illness I had a number of years ago where I couldn't drink water for 6 months. And another is there are grandmothers, Native American grandmothers, grandmother being a title like an elder across the United States that are doing water walks, and also in Canada. And I know some of these grandmothers, and one of them is grandmother Doreen Bernard. And in May 2019, she and other grandmothers began a water walk, which is sort of like a prayer type ceremony where they pray for the water. They undertook this water walk, which was going to be over 600 miles through the traditional territories of the Wabanaki Confederacy, which includes the Abenaki, Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, Penobscots, and Maliseets. And their journey took them from Nova Scotia to Nebizun or Nebizun, Maine. And it was approximately 50 days or so. And grandmother Doreen Bernard said, this 53-day ceremony where we're going to walk for the water, to pray for the water, and pray for Mother Earth. As fellow citizens of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Abenaki share their concerns for the life-giving waters. And this is a watercolor painting of the land and the waterways, watersheds of our territory. So it includes the northern New England section up here, where we are, of Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York, and where the Connecticut River goes all the way out to the Long Island Sound. This is by Amy Hook Theron. And you may notice as I'm walking through this, I'm going to try to give some brief descriptions, which may be helpful for some people. And as we look at this map, it shows a lot of these waterways. Some of them I mentioned. I mentioned already the West River, the confluence of the West River. And it's about 46 miles long, and its watershed is about 423 miles. And it's on the confluence with the Connecticut River, which is called the Long River in our language, and it goes right down this way. Let me see if I can get my laser pointer on. Yeah, and we can see the Connecticut River right here, and we call that Quenito. And then when we think about the Connecticut River, it's over 11,260 square miles of watershed. We have Lake Bidabagwa over here, or Bidabagwa, you might know it as Lake Champlain. Once again, another very important waterway in the Abenaki community, and it's 8,234 square miles of watershed. And then up in this area and crossing the border over into Canada, we have Lake Memphremagog. Memphremagog means the vast or expansive waters, and that watershed is over 687 square miles. So that's a pretty large area to cover. And along all of these waterways and many others, there have been Abenaki communities that have sustained their lives through these waterways. The rivers and tributaries of Indakina, our homeland, were our earliest highways. We used the rivers, the lakes, and the tributaries as ways for traveling, possibly up and down Quenatu and others. We used the water itself, the plants, the fish, the animals, the birds, and all of the wildlife that are associated with these water and wetlands as part of our traditional lifeways. And we continue to have a relationship with this water in our normal way of life. On this image, it's a picture of me making a fishnet, and there are some plummets here. Going back to that idea that these are very important to our lifeways, and we've always had this association. So this is representing sort of our past relationship with water. And it's represented through a picture of me doing the fish netting because this is a tradition that was passed down in my own family. I'm sorry, I may have opened, I think we have a couple extra slides here. Sorry. This is my own family, and this is my parents over here. This is my father, John. My mom is also Vera, and my children, and they're standing in front of one of our many family gardens. And My father is one of the people in our family that passed down many traditions about water and how it applies to gardening. And this was part of our state recognition application. So when we're gardening, it includes prayer, just like we were hearing with the water walks, because our garden is a sacred place. We're using these seeds to grow life, and those are considered to be living entities as well. And my father explains the corn is planted in the middle and then surrounded by the beans, which are then surrounded by the pumpkins and the gourds. A groove, and I'm reading a quote from my dad, by the way. A groove is then surrounding each plant, and this groove is put there to catch the extra water when the rain comes to help hold it in. And then the mounds were fertilized with sucker fish. For fertilizer. And I think here we go. And here is a picture of the suckerfish. When he was young, he and his brothers and cousins, generally the boys in the family, would go out fishing. There were certain fish that were for the family to eat, and then there were these suckerfish that would then be used as fertilizer in the gardens. So this slide kind of captures with the fish, the picture of me making the fish net, and then um, in the windowsill picture, there's an image of a fish trap, a gathering basket for the fish net, and gardening implements. So you have this complete circle of things it takes from the time the water comes down into the with the rain and it lands in lakes, rivers, tributaries, to the time somebody goes in, fishes, pulls out the fish. Some of them will be eaten, some of them will be put into the ground and tilled in. And then they'll be gathered in baskets and we'll be able to eat this yummy and nutrition food that's going to sustain our families. So this next image is a black and white image of two men in a canoe, and they are on the Missisquoi River. Can you see my PowerPoint? It just sort of went down on my end.
I can see it still.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at two men in a canoe on the Missisquoi River. In the background, there's a fairly large cattails stand, and also wild rice growing along the river. As stewards of the environment, Native American people know the importance of clean water and stewardship, which is important to all of us. The Missisquoi River runs for approximately 88 miles rather, and the watershed drains farther down. It actually wraps through Vermont and Canada. And there are problems with phosphorus loaded in from different agricultural activities, and it's resulting in a huge accumulation of phosphorus-rich sediments in the bay. And of course, that kind of stuff doesn't happen all night. It happens over many, many decades. And also due to high levels of mercury in the tissues of walleye fish, the Department of Health at various times has issued fish consumption advisories and advising and recommending that pregnant women or women of childbearing age shouldn't eat the fish. We also know how essential the water is to our foodways and our everyday activities, and we have a relationship with not only the water, the fish in it, and the food we eat. This is an image of the Missisquoi community during a fish-in that was held in the 1980s. So there are a bunch of people lined up against the shore. And they were holding fish-ins at this time to express their lack of indigenous hunting and fishing rights. And at this time, game wardens would come in and they'd end up getting fines, and eventually it would go to court and they would be found innocent, and because they were Aboriginal or Indigenous people. And it was until like, I think a year or two ago that the Abenaki people actually received the right to be able to hunt and fish without having licenses because we are Indigenous people. This slide reflects my own family's relationship with water. So there are three different pictures on this slide. The first one is of my father, and he's standing on the land and he's pulling in some cattails to cut down. And in the middle, there is a picture of me carrying some bulrush out of the swamp, and then my son up on the land carrying a stack of cattails. So my family and other Abenaki families have always had relationships with wetlands, and they are just refuges for all kinds of different creatures. And for thousands of years today, marshes have been valued as a vital resource um, for many different activities throughout Indakina, our homeland. The marshes can be navigated by canoe, and where you can be gathering different wildlife plants for foods and medicines straight from your canoe. Um, the wildlife plants also protect different animals and also provide cover for any travelers or people in the canoes that might be out in the waterways. The cattails and other plants also protect against flooding and buffering impacts from storms, and they also filter the water, which is really important considering all the pollutants in water today. And my own family's connection is very strong to cattails because we still use cattails in our art, in our foodways. And the tubers provide valuable food and for all of us. Almost every part of a cattail is edible, if you know how to prepare it. And so I don't recommend everybody go out and start eating cattails because if you don't prepare it properly, you're going to make yourself sick. Um, but out in these marshes, you'll also find flagroot, which is also a medicine plant, bulrushes, sedges, and reeds, and they all have plant fibers used in crafting for textiles, making baskets, mats, and carrying implements. This is my apprentice, Jesse Lawyer, and he is making a cattail shadow decoy. And on the right, there's an image of the exhibit where at the bottom, you can see a finished cattail decoy. So I keep on talking about cattails. They keep on coming up because they are so important. Cattails and wild rice are super important for contributing to wetlands biodiversity. They serve as an abundant food source for migrating waterfowl, and they produce cover for them during nesting times, which is really super important. And a wide variety of birds also eat the seeds of wild rice. Muskrats use the stalks for both food and lodges, and these plants provide important habitat for animals such as beaver, muskrat, herons, and ducks, and geese, and frogs, and fish. Additionally, the dense nature of the wild rice stands act as nurseries for fish and frogs that serve once as a food source for birds like loons. I love this picture. When I see the frog sitting in the puddle of water, I'm thinking, oh, wow, how relaxed he might be. And not so much. This frog is actually, that puddle that it's in is actually the tire track of the heavy machine. This picture was taken on a construction site. And basically, there's no grass in the area, so the wheels just kind of dig in, and there was just like flash flooding, and the tire tracks got filled with water, and that's how this frog found himself there. Today's marshes are often considered wastelands, and their survival is threatened as cities and suburbs expand and more land is required for homes for people. So that's probably not a surprise for anybody here. And this is causing loss of habitat for little guys like this frog. We also have excessive runoff of synthetic chemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides that are contaminating the water, leading to deformities and death in vulnerable amphibians. So when we look at frogs, frogs are an indicator species of the health of water, and that's something Abenakis have known since time immemorial. If you don't see the frogs when there's, at the time we're supposed to be seeing them in the water, it's probably not a good source of water. And also looking at what the frogs look like and what kind of deformities they may have, that, it's another indicator. And today scientists are looking at frogs as indicator species as well. In addition to absorbing floodwaters, marshes act as a buffer zone thanks to their ability of plant species and soils to filter out the contaminants which might otherwise wash into streams after rainstorms. So as more and more of these marshes are being filled and drainage is putting in, there's just a continual perpetual cycle of more pollutants going into the water. Preserving these wetlands while reducing our usage of chemicals is helping the plants and waters that live in marshes, also to help keep the waterways of the Lake Champlain Basin, the Connecticut River Valley. We want to clean all of these places, and that's where the Clean Water Act has been coming into play. I've seen in certain areas water qualities are improving, and that's really important. And bringing this back home for me, into El News territory. These are the faces that were inscribed into the rocks on the side of Quinnitu, the Connecticut River. They were incised into the rocks thousands of years ago. Abenaki people, we recognize our connection to the water, healthy living, and also our spiritual systems. And this is a very sacred site here we're looking at. It's in southern Vermont, and some people call it the faces, some people call them a petroglyph site. And these petroglyphs are really important. You only find them near waterways and in certain circumstances. So here in Bellows Falls, you have the faces that are engraved in the rocks on the side of the road. And then down below, at one point, there used to be whirlpools in the water. And it was said at one point, the fish were so dense that you could walk across the river, which of course they're not anymore. The Connecticut River is pretty polluted. And of course, there are the dams and stuff like that that are stopping fish from migratory fish and fish from coming home to spawn. I think there are 13 dams on the Connecticut River. So places like this are places where we have connections to our ancestors, and we would really like for other people to be able to join us in this understanding that water is a living, breathing entity, and for everybody to do what they can to protect the water. So at this point, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Let me shut this down.
If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll read them aloud.
Thank you. And I'm coming back.
We have one question. Where can we see the exhibit?
Sure. So the exhibit right now is at the Institute for American Indian Studies in Washington, Connecticut, until the end of the month. And April 1st will be opening at the Bennington Museum, and it'll be there until July. And then in July, it moves to Mount Kearsarge Indian Museum in New Hampshire. And we're also offering teacher training associated with this exhibit on March 25th in Vergennes. If anybody's interested in that, I can drop the link into the chat box. And there is also a related talk that's coming up called Quinnitu Sustainer of Life, which will include Indigenous and scientific views on the Connecticut River. Yes, there is a link for that. Let me get that.
We have another question as well when you're ready.
Sure. I'm trying to come back to put the link in the chat box. Here we are. Let's see, there's the chat box. Okay, what's the other question?
What type of art do the artists in the association work on, and how else do they share their work?
Very good question. So, we have artists that work in both traditional and contemporary mediums. So in the traditional mode, we have people that work with wood. We do porcupine quill work, weaving, work with stone, like stone carving for pipes and stuff. We have pottery makers. In the contemporary arts, we have painters, we have sculptors, and literary artists as well. We have a handful of authors, and we also have humanities presenters. And you can find them, some of their work on that website.
There's another question. What other organizations have you partnered with? I am a board member from Trout Unlimited. This is from Bonnie Daly. We would be very interested in your work and possibly including you in conservation projects.
That would be fantastic. We work with organizations not only within Vermont, but throughout our homeland. Um, so with our traveling exhibits, we tend to partner with 5, 6 or more different partners that will take exhibits. We are currently working with the National Park Service, and we've been partnering with them for about 7 months now. We've been working on Abenaki events, such as there's been a concert at the St. Gaudens Memorial at St. Gaudens National Park in New Hampshire. We had Indigenous Peoples Day events last year. We're going to be doing them again this year. And we also have the Abenaki Word of the Week program. That has been a big hit. It just debuted. Let's see, who else are we working with? We work with a lot of different native communities. So we work with the Missisquoi Abenaki, the Nohegan Abenaki, the Elnu Abenaki, and Kelowsuck Abenaki, as well as tribes in New Hampshire and throughout New England. Yeah, so if you have any ideas, bring them down. People contact us pretty regularly because they have something coming up and they want to figure out how we can work together. And I also dropped the link for the Abenaki Arts and Education Center, which is the second organization that I'm the founder of, in case anyone knows any teachers that might be interested in that upcoming teacher program.
Another question. What do you think of as the mark of river conservation or river access done right?
Could you repeat that?
What do you think of as the mark of river conservation or river access done right?
That's a very complicated question, and I think it is its own program. Very briefly, we need to, and I know this isn't a popular answer, we need to find ways to return rivers and the associated species, all of our relations back to the way they were. So we were talking about this idea with how blocked they are with the fishing dams. If we can't take out the dams, which it would be nice, but I don't think that's going to happen. We need to get those fishing ladders in, the fish ladders rather, so fish can travel back to where they need to spawn. We need to figure out ways to clean sediment in a safe manner. If you're out in Brattleboro, for instance, there by the railroad station, if you go right out into the water there's a sludge field that's like 100 feet by like 150 feet, and it's all the sludge residue left over from when they were burning coal um, to produce the early electric for Brattleboro. And right, if you know, they need to figure out how to safely remove it. It's awful that it's there. It's covered in sediment. If you disturb it, then, you know, it affects all of the water in the area. There have been attempts in different places to try and remove this type of sludge. They've tried burying it and things like that, and so far we don't have good means to be able to restore that. And also, we need to do more education efforts for families to help them know what to do, because there are simple things they can do. You know, things like not flushing your medicine down the water, because one of the things that happens is when you live in a city, you flush and if you're lucky, it goes to a water treatment plant where the water is treated before it goes out into the river or the lake. But even when you treat the water, that's not the greatest water. I wouldn't want to drink that water. um so we just have to continue to find new doing research to learn new ways of cleaning things up and amp up education in schools and stuff. And I would say taking a two-eyed seeing view of how to work on this. And that's what our series is about. Two-eyed seeing is the idea that you can bring Indigenous and Western views together to find solutions and um, ideas that maybe we wouldn't have thought of on our own.
We have another question. How do you recommend restoration practitioners who are harvesting plants useful to Abenaki, high in phosphorus, offer these sites as harvest ways to Abenaki artists and medicine people to work with some of these plants in their crafts? How the
Hi,
elder
Jess. I know who that is. Hi, Jess. How are you? Um, Jess has been working on a project um at Shelburne Museum on their land close to Lake Champlain, and she has a couple of test plots where she has been testing um reintroducing indigenous plants. I think it was about, and I may get this percentage wrong. Sorry, Jess, if I get it wrong. I think it's about 80% of the plants that are used in foods and traditional foods and medicines are planted in these two lots. And the idea is that they're sucking the phosphorus and stuff out of the ground, which was polluted from agriculture and stuff. And we're setting up agreements with sometimes with families, with organizations and stuff that do have land, so that way Abenaki artists and families are able to come back to these places where we would have naturally been harvesting for thousands of years and have permission to be able to go back there. So people can contact the Vermont Abenaki Artist Association if they have land that they would like to share, that they would like for us to be able to harvest on. It doesn't 100% mean we have the capacity to get somebody to a remote area. But if we have a list of the places that are available, then, you know, and we know when they're available, then we can do our best to try and connect artists and families to landowners to start these restorative practices. Thank you. Anyone else?
It looks like there are no other questions in the chat at the moment.
And there was a second part of that, Jess said
Yeah.
about the elderberries. Yeah. So So Jess, we weren't able to make it to that plot to be able to harvest, and Jess actually did the harvesting themselves and froze the elderberries until we were able to get together to pick them up. And one of my friends and I ended up making the elderberry syrup, and that was given to a family in the community. So it starts as a really big batch of elderberries, I think like 88 ounces or something like that, and it ends up a little tiny jar of syrup. And elderberry syrup is medicinal. So it's packed with vitamins, and it also helps with your immune system. So if you feel like you're getting a little bit sick, elderberry syrup. No preservatives, keep it in your refrigerator, and it's a great pick-me-up as well.
Another question is, what native fish species did your people harvest?
Oh, probably more than I can name on the spot. Trout, uh, bigmouth bass, salmon, shad, walleye. Fish are not my specialty. I'm sorry. um, I think that's a pretty is the other one bullhead? I think I'm gonna get the name wrong. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm not a fish person. Like, I am so not a fish person. This is really funny. I will go fishing. Yes. I've gone fishing on and off through my life and, bring the fish home. I will only eat fish that my family or my friends or myself catch. That's it. Like, I don't go to the supermarket and buy fish. None of that. So, in my life, most of the fish I've eaten has probably been, like salmon or trout.
Emily from our team, do you have any recommendations for clean water project practitioners slash implementers on how best to engage with Abenaki communities to apply perspectives for improved project design?
Reach out to us and start a conversation. And something I always say to people, and I hope this catches on, um, come to us when you first have the idea, and understand that our capacity is really stretched to the max. Often people figure out a project they want to do, they write in and get grant funding for themselves and stuff like that. And then they expect Abenaki community members to supplement their budget and stuff like that with their time. So it's better to bring them in from the beginning if you can. And if it doesn't work out in the beginning, just take into consideration that you're going to want to find ways to connect with them and treat them as any other consultant and build in professional fees and stuff like that. And that way, if our organizations don't have somebody else from the community can be hired to come into that position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, it looks like there are no other questions at this time. So I would like to thank you, Vera, for joining us and speaking on this topic. And thank you for all of your insight and stories. We really appreciate it. Um, I would like to briefly plug our next talk. Um, So our next lecture will take place on Thursday, April 13th, at 12 p.m. And it will focus on Vermont's lake in crisis, Lake Carmi, and what is being done to treat the algae blooms there. You can keep a lookout for more information on how to attend this event by signing up for our Clean Water newsletter. And I will put a link in the chat for the Clean Water lecture series page so that you can sign up for the next lecture. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I hope to see you at the next Clean Water Conversation.
Thank you
so
for
much,
coming.
Monica.
Thank you, Vera.
Bye-bye. Have a great day, everyone.